Star Wars Skeleton Crew has wrapped up its first and maybe final season. And in this video, we're going to review it. We're going to talk about the finale, the season as a whole, and what's next for the state of Star Wars. Welcome back to Movies Good, Internet Bad. I'm Corey. That's Shane. And let's not waste any time, my friend. How'd you feel about this finale?
Well, I think we're supposed to start with something negative and talk about how the Acolyte ruined Star Wars and killed the franchise, right? That's how the algorithm works?
Yeah,
Is that
somehow
how we're
this is
supposed to
all
start
Leslie
this?
Headland and or Kathy Kennedy's
Ah,
fault.
I
So
knew we were missing something, right? No, this was great. This was super fun. I hate that the fan base is so worried about ratings and everything like that currently because we have finally gotten, at least aside from Andor, I think a genuinely good Star Wars show for I think the first time. Like this was, I think, the best season of television that Star Wars has given us outside of Andor,
yeah,
personally.
I'd probably agree with you. I might put Mando season one. I don't know. It's hard to say, but yeah, Andor and this are right up there. And funny enough, on two polar opposite sides of the kid to adult, how do you like your Star Wars
Yeah. Yeah.
spectrum, right? So how did you feel about this episode in general, let alone the season?
Yeah, I thought it was a good little like they set up a lot of the things in the finale throughout the season, and so there were a lot of good payoffs. The
Mhm.
speeder bikes came back, and we had this long little speeder bike chase. It looked considerably better than the Book of Boba Fett one,
They were
which
actually
they're
going fast
improving.
in this one,
Yeah, I
Shane.
know. I
Amazing.
didn't think it was perfect, but it is TV budget, so whatever. I'm not going to complain too much about it, but it was fun. The reveal of the supervisor being Hal 10,000 instead of 9,000. It
Yeah, that was
was,
a pretty direct homage to
yeah,
2001, right? Yeah.
yeah, and for as derivative as John Watts is generally, he makes fun stuff. Like I'm a big fan of Spider-Man: Homecoming. That's actually my favorite Marvel movie, which I've mentioned on the channel before, which is kind of a unique take, I think. And it is very derivative of all those like 80s movies, but it's fun and it's heartfelt and genuine, and that's kind of what I like about his filmmaking. And he really brought a lot of heart to the series. There was a lot of good little emotional moments. Neil got to use his turbo laser, which was set up earlier, so that
Yeah,
was
like
that was
4
fun.
episodes ago or something,
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
yeah. It's just it's fun to see a TV show also that isn't like introducing some large CGI bad guy in the very
Mhm.
end, and it has to be some. Now this was like the most action that we got throughout
Sure,
the
yeah.
series, but I didn't feel like it was some like CGI army fest throughout the entire episode. It was still very small. It ended in one room with Jod trying to force push everybody at the same time.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting because there was a genuine part of me, uh, spoilers for those who haven't watched the episode, I really thought that they were not gonna be able to, like, resist and that it was gonna be like the Mandalorian that showed up to save
Yeah,
them at the end or
yeah,
something. Because the end of Mando season 3, he goes to the little New Republic bar and he says, "Hey, you guys can't defend the Outer Rim on your own. I'm going to
yeah.
take on some odd jobs for you." And I was like, "Oh man, they're going to do it, and it's just going to be like, see, it's all connected, ha ha ha." And
I would have been on this channel renting for an hour had that
yeah, but
happened.
but they had the restraint, which I
Yeah.
thought was really cool.
Hmm.
There were opportunities for them to turn this into like a real giant cameo fest if they wanted
Hmm.
to. Like when Jod gives his little speech about how a Jedi found him and she said he had potential, could have very easily been Ahsoka that he was talking
Yes.
about. But then he
Yep.
has the line where he says, "But she's dead." Okay,
Yep.
so it's not Ahsoka; it's just a
Yep.
random Jedi.
I
Cool.
I yeah. So who do we think his Jedi Master was?
Oh, who cares?
Was it Glup Shido?
Sure,
I
I
think
don't
it was
care.
Glup
Doesn't matter.
Shido.
That's the nice thing though about this
Yes,
story is that
agree.
they figured out a way within the context of this Mandoverse, which has been known for being kind of cameo city and I clap because I know Star Wars land,
Hmm.
and they put it in a box and it was its own thing. And this is not necessarily so much just this episode, but the whole series. I really enjoyed it. Like it's a show about pirates, and they didn't put Hondo Onaka in there, which
Yeah.
Dave Filoni is an executive producer on this show,
Yeah.
and they didn't put Hondo Onaka in there. Like
Yep.
it's great. I really liked it. It was the finale especially was really focused on the four kids
Hmm.
and what their journey was, and how it's a coming of age story from where they started to where they finished, and how they all grew throughout the course of those 8 episodes, without the distraction of the shiny toy of a Deus Ex Machina Luke Skywalker or
Yeah,
Mandalorian or something like
yeah,
that. So,
yeah, that,
bravo to the team for
yeah,
having the guts to do that.
yeah. They very easily could have turned this into, some connective tissue to something else. And I was very happy that they didn't. They left it as its own thing, and it was fun, and all the emotional stakes paid off. Maybe my only complaint about the finale specifically was I think it ended a little abruptly. Like they just get back with KB and find out she's alive, and then it just pans up to the moon.
Yeah,
And I felt like you could have had like a little couple-minute buffer where it's like kind of the epilogue type thing
sure.
that a lot of TV shows do.
So my retort there is, if you go back and watch some of the 80s movies that influenced this show, a lot of them end just like that.
Gotcha.
Like
Yeah.
ET ends, the ship takes off, and that's it. It's
Yeah.
over, you know, and
Yeah.
it's just roll credits. And I think as an audience, we've become very conditioned in the modern day and age to think like there's got to be an end credit stinger. Who's going to show up? What's going to be the thing that sells me on the next thing? And this just didn't have that. And
Yeah.
it just ended, and it put a bow on it, and it's like, all right, cool. Um, which begs the question: do you think we'll see more of these characters down the road, or do you think this truly ends up being just kind of a limited series sort of thing?
I think it would be good to get some of those characters moving forward. I think there's been rumors of the Filoni movie having characters from it or something. But
Hmm,
or maybe the Mando movie. I'm not sure. But no, I think all of these characters were really well received. So I'd like to see them in more stuff. I think it would be a shame if this is where we ended it because it's left kind of open ended. Like they're all alive, the barrier's down, they have access to the whole galaxy now,
sure.
and they even leave Jod with a little bit of like a glimmer of hope there in the end.
Yeah. Which is
I think it's
interesting after his little
yeah,
speech about how dark the galaxy is with little
yeah,
pinpricks of light. I thought that was actually a very well written line,
yeah.
which I guess that goes to show you when it's not a certain John Favreau writing the scripts in the Mando verse, that there can be some nuance in the writing, which is quite nice. Could you imagine if they had Neil meet Grand Admiral Thrawn, and Neil was like, "Oh, you're blue too. We must be friends." And then Thrawn just looks at him with his red eyes and
I'd
just
like to
smokes
not
a
imagine
cigarette and
that,
kills him.
Corey. I'd like to not imagine that. I will say that the Jod he might be redeemed, but he did one irredeemable thing, which was he yelled at Neil.
He
And anyone
did.
that yells at Neil deserves to die,
I mean, he yelled at all of them, really.
but mostly Neil.
Yeah. Um. So, and now that we've come full circle, season's over. It's been 8 episodes. Um, when you think about a season of TV, the important thing here is that your main characters go on a journey, and
Mhm.
all of those characters are different coming out of the show than they were coming into it. How did you feel that this show did in that context with our four main characters, the kids?
Yeah, I think they all had a decent arc, but I'd say kind of similar arcs. It didn't necessarily set up one specific thing that they needed to overcome for each of them. At least I didn't feel that way. Maybe you feel differently. But at the end of the day, there was enough character growth, right? Like they start off super sheltered and then they become brave and adventurous. And I
Sure.
think that's enough for me.
Yeah.
It doesn't need to be anything more complex in this type of show.
Yeah, and I think, when you look at the first episode where they didn't even know who the others were, and
Hmm.
they're kind of like at odds with them, and then at the end of this one, giant group hug, big smiles, like they've learned to accept others into like their found family, which is a lot of
Hmm.
what Star Wars is about, is
Yeah,
found family. So
yeah,
I thought that was really cool. I even thought that Wim's dad and Fern's mom both got
Yeah,
like halfway decent arcs
yeah,
for
they did.
supporting
They
characters
did.
too. Seeing Wim's dad get on the speeder bike and like have an adventure of his own after
Yeah.
being the most boring person
Yes.
imaginable,
Yeah.
like I love that. I thought that was great. So um, let's talk about production, because this is a volume show, which is very
Yeah.
similar to your Ahsokas and your Mandalorians and all those guys, your Obi Wan Kenobis. Uh, I personally thought that this was easily, with the exception of maybe Mando season one, the best looking volume show by like a long shot.
Yeah, yeah, it's not close. It looks very good. It's not perfect. There are various scenes where I can still pretty easily tell it's a volume set, but I think this did the best out of any of the shows that, and frankly, movies too, that I've seen use the volume. It did maybe the best at disguising it throughout. Like it made it feel bigger, whereas every other show or movie that's done the volume feels very small and cramped. This one did not feel that way, and I don't. They must be getting like better at tricks on how to disguise it and camera moves and stuff like that. Uh, but this looked far and away better than like even the last Thor movie that was heavily volume, where it
Yeah,
just
I
the
think of
camera rotates around three people in a tiny circle.
what was it?
That's
Was
the
it
movie.
was it Ant Man, the third Ant Man movie, where it was just like everything looked like it was on a circle
Yeah,
and every character was running counterclockwise
yeah,
instead of running in a
yeah.
straight line. It's
It,
just like you're not fooling anybody with that.
right.
No, there were parts, especially in this finale. I was
Hmm.
looking at it going, this is like borderline movie quality stuff that they're pumping out here, and I'm sure that this show probably had a smaller budget than an Ahsoka or an Acolyte, or
Hmm.
definitely an Acolyte. There's no way this was a $200 million show.
I
I
hope it
don't think so.
wasn't.
So, um, I mean, kudos to everybody involved. I thought all the directors came in and had their own nice little touches to it, whether it
Hmm.
was uh, the Daniels or David Lowery or Jake Schreier or Bryce Dallas Howard, uh, Isaac Chung, and then John Watts himself. He did the premiere and the finale. So um, I can't say enough good things about the show.
Yeah,
I was just
yeah,
really pleasantly surprised by it.
yeah. I think maybe my only little faults are, I think the characters could have used a few more dynamics between them. A
Okay.
lot of the dynamics they were playing off of Jude Law's character throughout the
Yeah.
show,
Yeah.
and they got that one little episode where they kind of have their own, because it's the one with the crab thing,
Mhm.
where
Yeah.
they get to interact a little bit. I felt like if there was a little bit more interaction between them, we would have kind of bought it more as we went along. That's maybe my only fault, but
Okay.
uh, I'm grasping at straws here. I think overall it's a very good season of television.
Yeah. One of the things that you've talked about before on this channel in particular is uh, getting good performances out of kids,
Yeah.
which is a Herculean task.
Hmm.
Uh, I thought that this show did a very good job of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the story was not, you know, the most complicated thing on earth. We're not asking these kids to go be Killian Murphy and Oppenheimer, right?
Right.
But for what they needed to do, I thought they all did a very good job and
Yeah.
were very well directed and gave very serviceable performances.
Yeah, no, they're great, and I think I did this when we reviewed the first couple episodes. I think I said this, but the contrast between the child actors in the Acolyte and this, it's night and day, right?
Totally night and day. Yeah.
But you could argue that in the Acolyte, it was even more essential to get the good performances out of the child actors there because of like the story
The
hinged
whole
on
crux
it.
of the story. Yeah.
although although you could argue that if the child actors aren't good here, then the show falls apart too.
Sure.
It's always the thing, right? They always say never cast like kids or pets because it can totally flop on you, but here they nailed it.
Yeah. I thought that, their mission statement going in was the Amblin
Yeah,
80s vibe. And I thought that they captured that perfectly. And kids with a big imagination, but feet that are too small to fit into the shoes that they want to wear. That felt like this show in a
yeah.
in a nutshell, and I thought that was all great. Uh, so let you mentioned the Acolyte. That was the last show that came out before this, and very divisive show. It
Are you
seems like
sure?
this one, yeah, I'm pretty positive on that one. Checking my sources, yes, divisive. Uh, this show ended up being something that it seems like the vast majority of the Star Wars fan base really likes.
Yeah,
However, it appears that not a terrible ton of people have tuned into it.
yeah,
Let's talk about the state of Star Wars now, because we've got a win here. We've got a big win coming with Andor season two. I feel it in my bones,
yeah.
Shane, that it's going to be good. Probably great, if anything. Where is Star Wars as a franchise? If we've got good shows that are coming out, but nobody's watching them, what are we talking about here?
Yeah, I think part of it though is this kind of lack of trust with the franchise in general. Um, Most of the stuff that has been coming out recently has not been good, and you can only take so many of them, right? A lot of
Sure.
people are blaming the Acolyte, and that's the reason why Star Wars is dead. But I swear there's a new reason Star Wars is dead, like once every 2 weeks. It has been,
Yeah.
since Disney bought the franchise, everyone's proclaiming the franchise dead.
Right. Yep.
But really, I think the issue is like if you look at Mando season 3 is not very good.
Mm-hmm.
Book of Boba Fett, not very good.
Mm-hmm.
The Acolyte, not very good.
Mm-hmm.
When you get that in a row, and I guess we had Andor in there to save it
Yeah, I mean, but
to
Obi Wan
some
Kenobi
extent
was in
in
there
between.
too, and
Obi Wan Kenobi as well.
that wasn't
Yeah,
great
not
either.
very good.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you can only take so many of these before you just kind of tune out.
Sure.
And I don't think it was one specifically. I think it is kind of a lack of direction for the franchise in general. But this same kind of thing happened with Marvel, where it was like it seemed like they kind of lost their way for a bit, and just everything slowly trended downwards box office wise, right?
Sure.
Uh, but I think in general, as long as they can just, I would almost say, don't even worry about the return on investment right now. Just focus on quality bar above
Mm-hmm.
anything else.
Yeah.
Because if something like Skeleton Crew comes out, it may not be a huge hit. But if it gets all the fan base to unite around something and say, we like this,
Mm-hmm.
then it gets them engaged and they'll
Yeah,
talk about it more, right?
for sure.
Like, I'm not going to recommend anybody watch Obi-Wan Kenobi, but I might recommend they watch Skeleton Crew, right?
Sure.
So I think there's been, you know, time after time disappointing series and people have just kind of checked out.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully, now that we've got Skeleton Crew for the kids and then Andor for the adults
Mm-hmm.
in a row,
Yeah.
maybe it can start getting in the right direction again.
Yeah. My big concern is what happens after Andor,
Yeah,
because if you look at the slate right now, the only thing television wise that's confirmed is a second season of Ahsoka, which they haven't even started filming yet, which means
yeah,
it's probably at least another year, maybe 18 months
yeah.
away. Uh, there's the Mandalorian and Grogu movie that's on the slate for May of 26. There's Filoni's movie that's been announced, but we don't have a date for. There maybe the Ray movie, is that happening still? Who knows? I don't know.
Doesn't
You don't
sound
know.
like it. I don't know.
I don't even know if the people at Lucasfilm know. Mangold's movie, which has a lot of promise to me, especially considering it's supposed to be written by Bo Willimon, who wrote the prison arc for Andor season one. Uh, that could be great if it ends up happening, but there seems to be so much, everything's up in the air kind
Hmm.
of at Lucasfilm, and it's not even a direction of the franchise as in like what stories are we going to tell. It kind of feels like we're throwing spaghetti at the wall and
Yeah,
looking to see what sticks, right?
there's a lack of a clear strategy.
Yeah.
And I don't know what the intent is other than let's try and make some money out of this franchise while we own it.
Well, sure. Yeah. And that's
But
the end all be all though, right? Is the almighty dollar, because it's the Walt Disney Company. So
yeah, it doesn't feel like a franchise that is hinging around a story or something like that. Whereas Star Wars, when it first began, was these three movies, and then
mhm,
the prequels, which were related to the original movies. So you
yeah.
have that core, right? And then they came out with the sequels, which are still in that core. But
Hmm.
now that those are done, it's like what do we have to latch on to? And it seems
Right.
like the connective tissue is kind of this Mandoverse thing, but then Mando wasn't very good, and so it yeah, Mando was
So
good for a while. I don't want to say it was never good, but
so I think one of the strengths that Star Wars can have is the fact that it doesn't have to be tied down to any specific period of time, right?
True.
Like you watch the Marvel universe, everything they do is propulsive. It's all about moving forward. What's the next
Yeah.
story? How do we tell the next thing? How do we connect
Yeah.
it to this, to that, to that, to that, to get to the next Avengers movie, right?
Hmm.
Star Wars doesn't have to do that. Like
No.
right now, all those things that are on that slate, the Ray movie is after Episode 9. The Filoni movie is in the Mandoverse. The Mangold movie is 25,000 years before Phantom Menace. The Acolyte was 100 years before all that. Like they're not shackled down by anything, right?
They're not, but I do feel like there is something to be said for having like the main dish.
Okay,
It can't all be sides, right?
sure.
Like
Okay,
in the
then
past, like you had the Clone Wars and that was your side, right?
yeah.
Whereas like the saga was the main dish.
Okay. So what should the main dish be then?
I don't know.
See, that's the question, right?
Yeah.
And I wonder if you walk down the hallways of Lucasfilm, do they know? Are they trying to figure that out right now? And are they like slamming their heads against the wall trying to
Yeah.
figure it out? I don't know.
And I think that's the problem is they had it with Mando season 1,
Hmm.
and when that hit big, that was the new thing. That was their
Sure.
new main dish.
Hmm.
But then it kind of tailed off, and they're trying, like the movie is coming out, and so
Yeah.
maybe that'll be a big thing. And
Yeah.
I guess they're kind of trying with this Thrawn thing, but I personally don't think that's going to catch on. I think
I don't
it's
know,
too
man.
insider baseball for
It
most
might be too
people.
insider baseball, and the initial setup for it in the Ahsoka show
Is bad.
landed kind of like a wet fart. To
Yeah.
be honest with you, like if you go back and you read some of those Thrawn books, or even if you watch Thrawn in the Rebels cartoon, very different characterization than what you see in the Ahsoka show. And that introduction, which is the one that unfortunately is to a very large swath of people,
Yeah.
kind of it just didn't really hit much for me. So there's always a chance they could turn it around. That there's always a possibility. And if anybody is going to get a project greenlit, it's going to be Filoni because he's a creative executive at
Yeah.
Lucasfilm. So we'll see. I don't know. It's hard to say.
Yeah, I kind of feel like this is why I'm the most excited for the Mangold thing, because it's like it's got a good writer attached to it and a solid director, like
Yeah.
Mangold's Academy Award nominated director.
Hmm.
Um, and he's done a lot of, I mean, Indy kind of flopped, but I wouldn't
It's
consider
still a very
direction to be that.
competently made movie.
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
shot well. It's lit well.
Yeah.
He's now part of the Lucasfilm family, so he knows how to work within that system. I think
Yeah.
he's a good fit for that film.
Yeah. As long as the script is good, I think that movie
Right.
will be good. And I'm hoping that that can kind of be a jump start. It almost like Star Wars feels like it needs like a reboot, and not in the sense of like we're just going to recreate the first movie again,
Hmm.
but in the sense of like let's take this universe and kind of make our own new thing that we
Yeah.
can really pivot the franchise around and then start telling stories from there.
Yeah.
Because it seems like once the sequels kind of tailed off, if you think about it, let's say the sequels were beloved hits, right?
Sure.
Then you could do all sorts of branching storylines
Oh,
off of
for
the
sure.
sequels and Ray and all this stuff, right?
It
And
would have
that's
already
where you
been done.
right that and there'd be no issue with
Yep.
the state of Star Wars right now. But when that tailed off,
Hmm.
now it's like they're just kind of throwing darts and hoping that something hits.
Yeah. I personally think going way in the past is the easiest route to
Yeah,
success,
I agree.
because if you look at the lore, and I'm not a stickler for lore stuff, but if you do look at it, this can go back before the Rule of Two was instituted.
Yeah,
If you want to have your Lord of the Rings Return of the King style or Helm's Deep battle between Jedi and Sith, where it's 100 Jedi on one side and 100 Sith on the other, there's nobody stopping you to say, sure, go ahead and do that. And I think that's what I don't want to talk down about the Star Wars fan base because I'm a part of it, but that's what a lot of people want to see. They go nuts when they see lightsabers and when they see wild action sequences and all that kind of stuff. If we want to try to give the fans what they want, which seems to be the North Star for the Walt Disney Company at this point, going back in time and doing it back then there are no rules. You can make your own rules. You can make it epic. You can make it awesome. I think that's the easiest way.
Yeah, and I think the less restraints you put on creative people, the more talent you're going to be able to attract.
Oh, for
Because
sure.
right now, I don't think anyone wants to touch it when it's like, well, I have to follow this Bible, and if I don't follow it exactly, I'm going to get death threats for 3 months. Like, who wants to do that?
I don't know, man. Is it worth it to get to film a Jedi to then get all the death threats after? I don't know. It
I doubt it.
seems a bit
But
odd, but
yeah, but yeah, I think going back in time makes the most sense. You can kind of, if you think about it, I think another reason why Star Wars has kind of gone astray lately is they kind of forget that it's fantasy.
yeah,
Yeah, at times. Like I guess Ahsoka was kind of in that vein,
mm,
kind of.
sort of.
It was trying to be the Lord of the Rings, but failing. But if you think about it, like the original Star Wars was this. It seems like the influence that people have taken is, oh, it's this space western. It's like
Hmm.
it's not really. There's a western character in it, but it's mostly a fantasy, right?
Yeah,
There's a mystical force connecting all of us. There's the mentor, like the mentor wizard,
there's a
and
princess that needs saving.
right, right. It's all that, right?
Yeah,
And I think we've kind of gotten away from that fantasy aspect of it.
sure.
And I wonder, like, if I was doing a Star Wars movie, I would actually kind of I would incorporate a lot more of those fantasy elements, maybe from like newer fantasy, because like George picked up a lot of stuff that the Odyssey and all
Hmm.
that stuff, right? But I think if somebody was telling a new version of Star Wars, they could take some newer stuff, Witcher and Game of Thrones and stuff like that, and kind of
Sure. Oh
sprinkle it
yeah.
in as well, right? So I think that could be a fun direction. I think the reason why I am not super into all the lore is because it feels very specific. Whereas
Hmm.
like it doesn't feel epic or grand. It feels very like there are these 6 Jedi and everyone in the world is related to them.
6 degrees of Luke Skywalker, ladies and
Yeah.
gentlemen.
So I don't know. I think that might be it, and maybe that's where Willimon is going with it, with Mangold for that, because it's meant to be like the birth of the Jedi, like
Hmm.
dawn of the Jedi type of stuff, which
Yeah,
is really cool because there's no rules at all, like not even Jedi rules. They can
yeah.
have attachments. They
I
can have love. Bring back love triangles in Star Wars, right? Like, where did those go?
and you can get Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross to do the score. I think Mangold had even said at one point that the idea is for it to be like a Ten Commandments style, like religious epic about the birth of the Force and the first Force users and whatnot. Like, sign me the hell up, man.
Yeah, that
That
sounds
sounds
very
fantastic.
interesting.
So,
Yeah.
but like you said, as long as the script is good. If the script's bad, you got nothing. So we
Yep.
need those to be airtight before any of these announcements get made, because that seems to be the other Achilles heel of Star Wars right now is just announcing shit without anything actually happening on them, and then
Got to
they
boost
get
the share
canceled.
price.
Exactly, yeah, it's the good old for the shareholders. So, any final thoughts on Skeleton Crew before we wrap this video up? Now that we've gone on a 10-minute tangent about the state of
No,
Star Wars.
yeah, that was bound to happen, right?
Yep,
But
yep, sure was.
no, I think it's great. I think I recommend it to most Star Wars people that I know, and some people hadn't even heard of it. So I think
Yeah.
marketing was a little bit less maybe than it feels like. Acolyte was kind of everywhere for a while,
Hmm.
and Skeleton Crew is kind of a like maybe a safer approach.
Sure.
But I think this is one of those shows that like Andor, I think the audience will build over time because it is self-contained. You don't have
Hmm.
to worry about anything else. It's just a fun little season of television, and I think we'll all remember it fondly for many years.
Yeah, and I think I hope they learned the right lesson that just like Andor, if you make something that's really good, people will eventually tune into it. It might
Yeah,
not be right away, but that audience is going to build, and
yeah,
I guarantee you, when Andor 2 comes out, it's going to have a big audience right from the start because of
yep,
how good season 1 was. So,
yeah.
uh, hopefully that'll be the case, and that'll be kind of their guiding light for these projects in the future.
The small speck of light in the darkness.
Yeah, a little pinprick of light, as
Yeah.
John Nanawood, the man of a thousand names, likes to put it. Well, that's going to wrap things up for this video. We'd love to hear from everyone watching. If you enjoyed Skeleton Crew, drop us a comment below and let us know. If you hated Skeleton Crew, drop us a comment below and let us know. If you just wanted to stare into Jude Law's eyes for 8 episodes, drop us a comment below and let us
That's
know.
why I
Uh,
watched it.
that's the only reason, right? Subscribe to the channel if you like movies and TV shows. Click that notifications bell so that way you get a notification for every new video that comes out. We will be reviewing season 2 of Silo once it wraps up later in this week. And then we're also going to be starting weekly reviews of season 2 of Severance, which we're both very excited for. So stay tuned for all of that and so much more. And we'll see you guys in the next video.